All right, by now, guys, you know I love talking about old wrestling. What you might not know is it's not my real passion. My real passion is helping people save money. My real passion is getting families out of apartments and into houses. My real passion is getting people's finances aligned so they can retire on time. I hated going to Walmart and seeing the greeter being 80 years old. She should not be working. She should be home. Why is she still working? Because she still has a mortgage. I want to help avoid that for you. The other thing I want to help you with, let's make sure your kids don't get saddled with student loans. If you've got a student loan, why did you get one? Maybe because your parents still had a mortgage. I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm being sincere. There's only so much money to go around. What I want to help you do is figure out where you are right now and where you want to be long term. And I do it at SaveWithConrad.com. I've been doing mortgages for more than 20 years. And during all that time, we've helped tens of thousands of families change their life. I mean, routinely, we're helping our podcast listeners save $500, $600, $700, $800 a month. But more importantly, get them out of debt faster and with cheaper monthly payments. But if you don't think it can happen for you, let me just tell you this. We are not the bank. We don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. We're going to get you a game plan on how to improve your credit, how to save a little bit of cash, and how to get into that dream house. Maybe you're already in the house, but it would be nice if someday we could put a pool in the back, or one day we want to upgrade to hardwood floors, or remodel the kitchen, or get a badass master bathroom. I can help you do all of that with no money out of pocket right now at SaveWithConrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. Check it out, SaveWithConrad.com, NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. And hey, y'all, don't take my word for it. Check us out. We've got an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. And as if that's not enough, go look at our reviews. Read them and weep, haters. ConradReviews.com. You'll see more than 1,000 5-star reviews. Our average review is 4.72 stars. Find out how much money you can save. Take control of your life in 2023 by taking control of your finances. We're going to show you how to keep more of your own money. If you've got credit card debt, what are you paying on that? 14%? 28%? You know you can do better. With the mortgage, though, you may not know this, the interest you pay is tax deductible. And we can even show you how to skip your next 2 house payments. So if you can get a lower monthly payment, pay your debt off faster, get a greater tax deduction at the end of the year, and right now, right after the holidays, skip your next 2 payments, buddy, this is the biggest no-brainer in the history of the world. Find out how much money you can save right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com, or hey man, shoot me an email directly, Conrad@SaveWithConrad.com.
Hey guys, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley here, and I need to call a quick timeout, a brief timeout, because I wanted to tell your listeners what I have been telling Foley is Pod listeners for a while now about all the cool things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
A brand new series has arrived on Ad Free Shows. Top of the Card unpacks everything you need to know in the wrestling trading card space. And we're starting with the granddaddy of them all, the 1982 Wrestling All-Stars Series A set.
Now, this set was not exclusive to any one territory at the time, as we were still right at the tail end of the territory era of professional wrestling. So it was basically a who's who in professional wrestling, with card number 1 being Andre the Giant. Others included in the set include Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Ted DiBiase, and others.
20 years ago, Eric took on Stone Cold in the main event on Raw, but the real main event was the confrontation that happened backstage before the show.
Now, the next week, I'm sitting in this chair, and that same guy, I don't think I had said a word to him that day. I don't think I had seen Rick up until the point he came through that door. And he's, getting me, just telling me to get up, get out of the chair. And he's so pissed off, he's bleeding. I'm on the phone, and he's got blood running down his chin because he bit his lip. He was so mad, he bit the inside of his mouth.
He's got blood on a backstage confrontation.
I hadn't even gotten out of the chair yet.
Ad Free Shows members got to sit shotgun alongside Kevin Nash and Click This co-host Sean Oliver as they watch back some of the worst matches in history. None more so than the Yeti.
Randy, now the mummy is not Frankenstein. You don't walk with your arms straight out,
with the arms out, right? And a Yeti is also not a mummy, but I don't know. Was this Jim Herd? Who was here? Well, whose brainchild was this?
Who gives a fuck?
That's just a small taste, a sampling, if you will, of what we have waiting for you, with 4 levels to choose from. 4. See for yourself why ad-free shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now, right now, at adfreeshows.com. Yeah.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hello and welcome to Arn. This is Paul Bromwell, and today I'm joined by the Hall of Famer, the founder of the Four Horsemen, creator of the Spine Buster. You know that move well. And a damn good-looking man in an Arn shirt, a Horseman jacket, a Horseman hat. It don't matter. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the enforcer. He's double A. He's Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you this week, my friend?
What was that?
What was what?
You did
I do a swipe? He's Arn Anderson. I was getting into it.
Was that like a spine buster?
It was. Oh, yeah. That was me trying to do the spine buster motion. Yeah. Was it piss poor?
So many have failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at least you got an excuse for failing. This is really not your domain. You know,
I'm a talker, not a wrestler. You know.
Yeah, apparently, that's the way with a lot of folks.
You've seen plenty of those come and go, haven't you, Arn?
I have. That's why I'm still out here, and we're still doing this show, apparently.
Hey, buddy, listen, it is so good to see you. And not only is it good to see you, but for our ad-free shows family, this is a live show. And some of you might be saying, what does live mean? Well, from time to time when we do these shows, we make it available for our ad-free show members to log right into the YouTube. They open up a comment pane, and you and I can see it, and they can talk and chat amongst themselves and watch the show live. I see Amy Vaughn and Adam O'Neill and Andrew Hermes. We call him Little Andy. I see Coach Rosie and others that have joined, and man, this is a blast. It's like we're just doing it all together and having a lot of fun today, man.
All inclusive.
All inclusive, ad-free, baby. That's what we do. So are you ready to get into this? Because we got a lot of great questions for this week's episode.
Well, I know this is a lot of people's favorite, including yours, so we aim to please, so let's get to pleasing.
We last week we talked about the formation of the Dangerous Alliance and how that group came to be, Arn. And I can tell you, we've just scratched the surface on that topic, and we're going to dive deep each week and look at that amazing faction. But today, as I said, we're taking a TO, a timeout, baby, and it's Ask Arn Almost Anything. We've got so many questions. There's no way we're ever going to get to all of them, but we're going to ask all of you each and every opportunity you have to make sure you post those questions, especially on Twitter. That's where we go to grab those and use that hashtag Ask Arn. That's what we're looking for. We'll collect them up, and we're going to do this each and every month this year. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And I think we're going to start with my buddy Brad Stanton. Arn, Brad owns one of those Horseman jackets, and he says, did you like Brian Pillman better as the loose cannon or Flying Brian?
Did I like him better?
Yeah, which version of him did you like better, I guess?
Well, you didn't know what you had with the loose cannon, and that was everybody backstage, too. So that was one of the first times I actually saw a guy hold his own destiny in his hands and actually had the carte blanche to push the envelope and just go off whenever he felt like it. And I can tell you, Kevin Sullivan, myself, I think everybody pretty much that worked for the company were wondering, is this guy just screwing with everybody and getting away with it, or what's going on here? At least with Flying Brian, you knew what you had. And maybe that's the reason we're still talking about it today.
about the loose cannon, because anybody that says they knew 100% is full of shit.
Yeah, no, that's without a doubt. You just never knew what he was going to do or say, but that's what made it compelling TV. Every time he came on the screen, you just didn't know what he was going to do or say. But man, Flying Brian, that's where we were introduced to him. That's where the Def Leppard music and the Bengal tights and him doing things we'd never seen before. And so that resonates with me as a fan back in those days. The time period we're talking about right now, we walked through 1991. So much of it has been Flying Brian and his introduction in WCW.
And, got to remember, he virtually came from nowhere. That was his first big company. So it was our first time seeing him. He was brand new. He was fresh. It was like he was a homegrown WCW star.
Absolutely. And then you had the relevancy of Jim Ross always making sure we knew about his background in football and then his athletic ability. So, Brad, hopefully we answered your question there. He also wants to know why Philadelphia was Horseman country and if you think it would be Horseman country in the present day. So what say you about Philly? Brad's a Philly guy. Why was it Horseman country?
Well, there's a bunch of salty fellas and females in Philly, and they like their sports on the edge, cutting edge. They like rough, tough teams. They like tough guys. The Rocky statue is in Philadelphia for a reason. It's just one of those cities that is blue collar, work all week, work your ass off, pay your bills on Saturday night and Sunday, go to a football game or a baseball game or to the wrestling matches. And when we first started going to Philly, we literally took that town away from the WWF through blood and guts. It's the only way I can say it. We went in there and we all bled to death, and it was all to capture an audience because they were selling lunch boxes and all that stuff, ice creams and all the other stuff that they were selling tons and tons of across town. We could run head up with WWF and have our audience, which were groups of guys and, gangs of guys. I don't want to say gangs, but groups of 4 or 5 guys that were all friends and lived in the same neighborhood would come down to the matches and they would drink some beer and have a good time.
Man, you nailed it. I mean, WWF's selling ice cream and wrestling buddies while you're selling stitches, bloody knuckles, and everything else. Just two different styles. And let's talk about it. Brad, you're from Philly. I mean, obviously everybody always says that you guys booed Santa Claus and roughed him up, at the Eagles game years and years ago. So Philadelphia loves a great heel, all right? They love that great heel faction. So of course it's Horseman country. You guys were made for that market.
Yeah, I think so. And I've always said I don't care why and who they're screaming for. I just want them to be screaming and loud. And Philly was always loud. And if they didn't like you, it's funny. They may dislike, say, Pillman and Tom Zink, because two good-looking guys, talented, the whole thing. Come right behind it. Dusty may come through the curtain and they go berserk. So it wasn't a bad guy, good guy thing. They liked who they liked.
That's right. Well, listen, we have a fun question here about from Brody Shanks. And he said, did you ever go to Vince's house after WWE rehired you in 2001? So we know about what happened in 89. How about after 2001? Were you back there having a picnic by the pool, Warren?
No. I didn't actually, I drove to Atlanta. Jim Ross was there, and he was interviewing potential WCW employees that they were going to hire with the new company. So I drove down to Atlanta on my own dime, met with Jim Ross. He said, I don't see a problem. You'll be hearing from us. And I drove back home. No trip to Vince. One and only. I guess I had a lot more to offer back in the days that he sent a limo for us and flew us to his house and all that.
So only one time to the McMahon estate. There you go.
One was enough.
And one was enough. Okay.
It was pretty impressive. It was an impressive presentation. And boy, if it would have panned out, it would have been wonderful.
Yeah. I got you. All right. Well, next up, a wrestling historian. He has a few questions for you, Arn. He said, who would be your team of 5 for AEW's Blood and Guts? Speaking of Blood and Guts, Arn, if you had to pick a team of 5, who would be your 5 going into that warfare? Which, by the way, I know we talked about it last week, but how good was it to see Dak and FTR, Dax and Cash back in AEW again?
Glad that they've made the right decision, hopefully, and they're going to be with AEW for a long time. I think that's where their worth will be appreciated. Let's face it, Dax is a headstrong guy, and he has a vision for what he thinks the business should be. And a lot of the time, and I would say almost most of the time, to the point of all the time, he's pretty close to being right. And the one thing that if you can get by butting heads with him, because he's headstrong, and I'll tell him, and he knows that, and I'm not even saying that's a fault. It's one of his attributes. Every team I've ever seen that walked into a match with those guys, and when it was all said and done, they were better for it. They were a better team right then. And the next day when they woke up, they were a little better. And they make everything they touch a little better. They work their ass off. They give 120%. They're just an asset to the wrestling business, period.
So if you got to pick 5, and I completely agree with you, I was, as I mentioned before, was fortunate to be at the event, and I exploded out of my chair, Arn, because to me, they are the Arn Tully of this generation. When I see them work together as a tag team, but who would be your 5 for a Blood and Guts? If you're kind of that guy out there managing, coaching, who's your 5?
There's 2.
Okay.
Moxley.
Oh, there. Okay. You're getting all the blood with him, that's for sure.
Powerhouse Hobbs.
Love it.
And let's think for a second for that next pick. How about this? Just because of the experience and what he brings to the table, how about Billy Gunn?
Oh, okay. I did not see that coming, but I like it. That guy is shredded and looks like he could still go 110% in the ring.
He is a immovable object. He has a wealth of experience. And you're right, he looks as good as anybody on the team, and it's not just show muscles, buddy. He is a beast. So there we go. And there's, countless other guys that you could put in that 5, but that would be my first run at it.
I'm so excited to see the push and powerhouse that Powerhouse Hobbs is getting right now, man. You and I have talked about him before on the show. You feel like he's the guy that they can do more with, and it looks like he has all the tools, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with him.
Well, he came in that ring here just a short time ago when they were in Frisco, and he cleaned house, buddy. And that's the guy I was watching at home. That's the guy that I've been talking to and talking about, and that's the guy that'll draw money. And it all clicked in for him. You never know when the light's going to come on for certain people. And a lot of the time it never comes on. But it came on for him, and I knew it was coming. And, buddy, he performed like he looked. Everything fell in line, and it was wonderful thing. Plus, of course, I think a lot of him as a human being as well.
There you go. Great guy. A wrestling historian says also, what's your favorite story of Andre? Do you have a favorite Andre the Giant story?
Oh, gosh. Well, there was a story that didn't become a story, but could have became a story. This falls into what if column, okay?
Okay.
Tully went up there. Tully and I went up to wrestle. And if not our very first house show, I want to say it would have been one of them. Andre before this, he would wrestle every night, would get one of the boys, and he would play cribbage, or he would play cards before his match, and he'd do a little drinking. Now, a little drinking for him would probably be 3-4 bottles of wine before his match. You know, that would be enough to pass the rest of us out. So they're playing, and I forget I think he was playing with Arnold Skolin. And Tully, not meaning any harm or anything, he just went down to the far end of the table and was going to, I don't know, I think he was just going to do some tricep presses. He's warming up for our match. Well, as he leaned on that table to do some presses, it wasn't secured, and it scooted, and there went a bottle of wine full, flipping and exploding on the floor. You could have heard a pin drop. There was a referee walking by. I went and got him, and I said, "Oh, Jesus, come with me." Do we have a runner here? And I went and got $100, gave it to the ref. I said, go get Andre as many bottles of whatever he's drinking as this will buy. And I think it bought maybe 4 bottles. He wasn't drinking the real expensive stuff. Bought 3 or 4 bottles. And I said, tell Andre I'm on it. Just go up and whisper him to him. Just say Arn is on it. Sent a runner down. They came in. A couple of guys cleaned up the wine. Andre never said a thing. He's still playing cribbage or whatever it was. The guy brought the wine in. I brought it in. Now, by now, Tully realized what happened. He was back in our locker room. He didn't know what to do. I brought the wine in, sat it on the table, 4 bottles, didn't say a word, didn't look Andre in the eye, walked out, and what could have been a disaster was never a thing. Not a word was said.
Arn Anderson saved the day, baby.
Yeah, I knew what it took to fix that one, that's for sure.
So if that doesn't happen, I mean, is Andre our heads rolling? I mean, is it an ugly scene? What do we get here out of Andre
Well, if nobody took responsibility and made it right, he probably wouldn't have done a thing. Then, better not ever end up in the ring where he is, because he would not have forgot it. It would have been a classic show of disrespect.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the way he would have taken it. And it wouldn't. I mean, it purely was just a not thinking accident by Tully. But in those days, Tully had a reputation for a little heat in the locker room, which is probably why he was such a great heel in the ring. That's who he was.
Yeah, and again, that would have been kind of the last thing, already having that reputation that Tully would want to have to deal with in that case with Andre the Giant, right? Oh, I also accidentally smashed your bottle of wine. Not a good look for Tully.
No, it was one of those things that everyone knew what just happened. Now let's see how everybody handles it. And,
yeah.
You know, in this business, back then, when you walked into that locker room, or really any locker room back when we were still in the territory days, it was a room full of grown-ass men with mores and different things in place that had always been that weren't necessarily talked about. Locker room etiquette is what we call it. There was just things that happened, and there are ways that you handle it, and you work, you know, and people in those days, it's like you could leave and walk out of a locker room if you had been in a territory for a certain amount of time. You could walk in, open your bag, look around the locker room, say you've been around that group of guys 6 months. Everybody's pretty much established themselves as one way or the other in the rest of the locker room's mind. To say there were thieves in the business is a horrible thing to talk about, that you can't even go to the ring and feed your family and come back without your valuables being safe. And 9.9 times out of 10, it was. But it was an occasional thief. Locker room etiquette would just say, when you go to the ring, have your stuff put up somewhere where it's not in plain sight. Don't tempt anybody.
Yeah, and I can imagine not every locker room you go to had lockers with locks and all that stuff, right? I mean, it's just
None
out
of
there.
them. None of them.
Okay.
You came in, you got a chair, you threw a towel over your chair, you put your boots in front of the chair, and for that night, that was your space. That was it. You don't take anybody's chair.
So your shit's just out there. Anybody could mess with it if they really want to.
Yeah. You know, everybody had, nice watches and wedding rings and, chains, crosses and stuff and some cash, and everything was a credit card back then. So it was just locker room etiquette. And going back to the Andre thing, how that was handled, there were a lot of eyes on it. And it was what was said and what wasn't said that the veterans looked at and went, okay, that's one fire put out. Because if Andre would have went off, say it wouldn't have been handled right, everybody in that locker room would have suffered.
Oh, I'm sure.
Not just the people directly involved.
Well, there you go. Arn saves the day. Wrestling alternate commentary has a question. He says, what was your reaction, Arn, to the Titus O'Neill greatest Royal Rumble moment when he slips and falls and slides under the ring in Saudi Arabia?
Well, number one, underneath that ring, if his head would have hit one of those center posts, he would have torn the whole ring down. The guy is a physical beast, but that move, him sliding probably 3 or 4 yards on his belly and disappearing out of sight, is classic Titus. I haven't laughed so hard at anything. Once we saw that he wasn't dead and he crawled back out from under the ring, man, I don't ever remember laughing that hard at anything. This is live TV.
And buddy, you said once you saw he wasn't dead, he was going so fast that if that, like you said, the support under the ring would have been in the wrong place, he could have been seriously hurt.
Well, you and I had been paralyzed.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know that if he, with him, big, thick, I mean, he was a physical beast.
Yeah.
Trust me. I mean, I don't know that he wouldn't have torn the ring down.
Man. Once you saw he wasn't hurt, it was hilarious, and I love that the announcers just let it go, and they just had fun with it, and it is one of those times that, and those memories that people will never forget. Everybody remembers that. Any kind of wrestling fan remembers that.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff. All right, Gavin's up next, and we're going old school here. We're talking Midnights. Of course, you worked with Bobby, Dennis, and Stan with the Midnights and Crockett, but do you have any stories about the forgotten Midnight Express member, Norvell Austin, from your time in Fuller's territory?
They were leaving as I was getting there.
Okay.
So, I mean, there might have been a couple of weeks that they were there, and I didn't get to know them very much at all. It's just one of those situations where literally, I bet there was 2 weeks and I was there, and 2 weeks they were gone.
So there you go. So basically, hi and bye to Norvell, and Arn moved on, and that was it. No other memories, Gavin. Gavin, though, does have another question. Everyone talks about how miserable the WWF rings were to bump in until Vince had to take in a few of them. But who had the best rings? NWA's rings always sounded great, but how were they for bumping?
They were the best rings that I've ever encountered. They were safe. The ropes were tight. They were safe. Everything was secure. We had great guys that were on our ring crew, that were former wrestlers, and they understood the importance of having a good, solid ring. The thing about the WWF rings is they were bigger. and the ropes were looser, and it took you a couple of more steps. Say you were going to go turnbuckle to turnbuckle. It took a couple of more steps to get you there. So, once you get used to running ropes in a certain size ring, it becomes automatic in your head. You don't count the steps. You just know when to start turning. It's automatic. And now you're faced with having to take 2 more steps, and it just made for sometimes clumsy.
Sure.
Clumsy.
Yeah, you're out of rhythm.
Your body is saying turn now, but you're not there yet, and your eyes are saying not yet.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a battle going on there.
Arn, the rings of the WWF in the days of Hulk and Andre earned a reputation for wearing wrestlers out because they were hard, stiff, and unforgiving. Working in these rings resulted in bruises, aches, and pains, and it required recovery, something that wasn't easy to come by with that WWF gruesome schedule that you've talked about. And that's something, no, it's not BlueChew, but it's important to our listeners, and that's sleep. We like sleep. Meaningful, comfortable REM sleep. And never has it been easier to get that sleep that your body needs. That's right, all of you in the chat, you want that sleep. You need that sleep. Amy, you want that sleep. Andrew, I hope you're getting that sleep because you're a cranky son of a bitch. But you can all get that sleep with Sleep Me. Arn, how important is a good night's rest?
Ask my wife. Because apparently, even with this product, which is awesome, which I've always been a guy that wanted the room cold, I wanted it black dark, ice cold, maybe a little bit of the news, just barely able to hear it in the background. But you want the room cold, you want the bed cold. And I got this night terror thing going on. You're familiar with that?
Oh, I've heard of it. I don't have them, but I've heard of it, yeah.
It's a real thing, man. And I have these vivid nightmares about, and just all kind of crazy stuff. And to be hot and in a bed that's sweaty too, I'm sure that would just multiply those nightmares. So it's a great product. Keeps you cool. Does the best it can keep your blood pressure down. And what can I say? I'm a fan.
Arn, listen, Sleep Me. This gives you the opportunity. You don't have to be a nude sleeper anymore. You can get one of their sleep systems. That's right. They have the Uller and Cube sleep systems, hydro-powered, temperature-controlled mattress toppers that fit over your existing mattress to provide your ideal sleep temperature. And for an extra layer of comfort, they also make the chilly blanket, the only weighted blanket that can also be paired with a control unit for the ultimate sweat-free sleep. We're talking some Arn Anderson language right there. Sweat-free sleep. So listen, head over to sleep.me/Arn. That's right. Even all of you who are listening here on ad-free shows, you don't get to hear these ads. You're hearing an ad right now. You don't get to hear these fantastic ads. This is one that's going to make you and help you sleep well. And you can save 25% off the purchase of any new Doc Pro, Uller, or Cube sleep system. This offer is available exclusively for Arn listeners and only for a limited time, so get yours now. That's sleep.me/Arn to take advantage of our exclusive discount and wake up refreshed every day. Arn, we move on, and it's time for a little put it in reverse. Top guy Terry, that's right, we all love him, Terry Weaver. And he had a question. He said, Arn, you were managed by 3 very different but notable managers, and J.J. Dillon, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Paul Heyman. I understand that the Dangerous Alliance ended in WCW after a contract dispute with Paul Lee in WCW. I always felt Heenan was the cornerstone of the Heenan family, and there would be no stable without him. Do you feel this was true of the Dangerous Alliance with Dangerously as the leader, even with the incredible level of talent that made up this group? Could there have been a chance of keeping that stable without him?
I don't think anybody knew what we had, be honest with you. They didn't know where some of these guys' careers were going, obviously. And it was like they threw Larry and I together just a couple of weeks after Barry and I were done and the Horseman thing was done. And there was one little promo that I said I'm not going to worry about, anybody but me and this man here. And, you know, it was underplayed, and they put us together, and it just so happened it worked. Putting all these guys with Paul Lee, who was starting to come into his own and was a great guy on the stick. You know, it was a great Band-Aid on what the company needed. They were still trying to get these babyface superstars built. And that was a group of guys that knew how to do it. And we were put together by necessity, I think, more than anything else. But I still don't think anybody at that time looked around and went, man, pushing the wrong guys. These are the 5 guys you need to push, and as well as Medusa.
Man, I tell you what, I loved last week's episode, just talking about putting the group together. And but man, there are so many people from that era, so many fans my age and my age range, should I say, that really just love that group and just kind of wished it could have kept going. You know what I mean? So much talent. You have a guy like Steve Austin and Rick Rude and yourself and Bobby Eaton, and just so many talented individuals coming together and having that kind of breath of fresh air as far as a new faction, right? Not the 4 Horsemen, not a group trying to, let's add some different members, but this was a brand new faction and really felt like it was going to breathe some new life into the WCW, and what you've said was still kind of a new company.
It was a startup company, and it was almost like a little mini all-star team that they put together. They just didn't know it. Who knew Austin was going to become Stone Cold Steve Austin? You know, I think Rick Rude still, you know, was working on his legacy. Bobby Eaton is Bobby Eaton. You know, Larry, turns out Larry was a player, you know, myself, you know. It's a good group of guys. Paul Lee, Medusa. You know, it was an incredible group.
For sure, sir. Rob Snyder's up next. He says, what memories do you have that you can share with us about the Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia? I think that venue is now closed. And he adds, thank you, Arn, for doing this podcast.
Oh, well, thank you guys. You know, we're always wanting to do the extra and give you extra because you deserve it, and we appreciate your loyalty. The one thing I think everybody should do is, I mean, when you go to Comic-Cons or wrestling conventions or independent shows or whatever it may be, and you see these incredible backstage photos of the different talent through the years. I mean, there was a guy, Eddie, who we lost just a while back, who was the photographer backstage in Richmond. And a lot of the stuff you see today, those backstage pose shots, all the Horsemen stuff, that was Eddie's stuff. And I think it's important to give him some recognition because he did really unbelievable quality work. And the stuff that I use today, some of the pictures that I use today are all Eddie's stuff. I can't think of his last name. Can you?
No, let me try to see if I can find him out, or maybe one of the ad-free show members if you want to search for it. Eddie, the photographer. He did a lot of your photography, you said?
Yeah, he did everything in Richmond. That's where he was based. That's where he lived. And he did just quality. We didn't know at the time, 30 years later, it was still going to be floating around out there. But it really, really was. He was a quality photographer and a big fan. And we lost him this year. I just wanted to give him some credit because when you think of Richmond, that's what I always thought about. He would be very polite. Hey, when you guys get dressed, do you mind if I get some pictures? And we'd go out, and little did we know we were doing ourselves a lot of good.
You know what? And I'm glad you brought him up. Our research guy's here, so hopefully he's checking it out, and we'll throw it in the comments for us. But, you know, and it's some of those guys that you never hear of behind the scenes that really help, you know, move you forward with whether it's appearances, scheduling dates. I know that you and we had dinner with Tony, and he's just a great guy that helps, you know, you out and others. But man, there's so many guys that, you know, they don't get all the praise and accolades, but are really just so important to helping as far as, you know, with these different things like that. You said you still uses photography.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like Tony Hunter when he brings his lineup of guys, you know, it's guys from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, but you look at them, it's an all-star team of the guys that are still still in the business, and a lot of the pictures we use are a lot of Eddie's stuff that he took back in the day.
Was it Cheslock by chance?
100%. Cheslock.
Adam O'Neill, thank you so much, brother. Eddie Cheslock, he threw it in the chat for us.
Yeah, and a good guy, and hope his family are doing okay. I know he had a lot of health issues, but it's always nice to give the right people a pat on the butt for the right reasons, and Eddie was a part of our business.
There you go. Well, we'll move on from there. We want to welcome Dale Southards to the Arn Show family. Dale wrote the following questions for you. He said, does WWE still have any rights to the Four Horsemen name, or could they even start a new Four Horsemen?
Nope. I own the trademark.
There you go. Could AEW start a Four Horsemen with your approval? Thanks, Arn.
With my approval, they could 100%. Probably going to cost a few bucks.
As it should, but that's right, it's yours.
We know Tony Khan.
Arn's getting choked up at that one. He's thinking about them dollars.
He has a few bucks, so
he does. That's right.
I will say this: I'm not going to allow that to happen. And the only way that would work, because that's a tremendous thing to do. Can you imagine walking in and being part of the new Four Horsemen? The expectations are going to be huge. Unless you had the right combination of guys and they were going to do the right things with it and it be something special, which it was for a lot of the time. Towards the end, we all know what happened, but yeah, I own my trademark. Brock owns his trademark as far as the Anderson name, and I own the Four Horsemen trademark.
Arn, we're going to pause and talk about our favorite sponsor once again this week. That's right, it's BlueChew time, and they're here to make sure you're delivering that spine buster, putting that spine to the pine every single time the right way, and making sure you're prepared to do so. And they have a special offer for the listeners of the Arn Show. Isn't that right, Arn? Arn? Well, guys, Arn's not around right now. I think he's taking care of business, if you know what I mean. And I want to make sure you have the opportunity to take care of business too. Guys, BlueChew is an online prescription service. No visits to the doctor's office. We talk about it every single week. No weird conversations. You don't have to wait in line at the pharmacy. And remember, the biggest perk and benefit of this, it ships right to your door in a discreet package. So listen, go to BlueChew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers. They're just going to ask you a few questions, make sure you're good, your health's in order, and you can take it. And once they verify that, it's going to be at your door within days, all done online. Very easy. And if you don't like swallowing pills, no big deal. The tablets are chewable, very easy to consume. So give it a try, guys. Listen, we hear a lot of folks that listen to our show that have reached out to us directly through our show DMs and said, guys, you are spot on with what you've been talking about with BlueChew. We have a lot of fun with it on the show, but I'm telling you, it takes away the worries, the anxiety, the stress, and helps you perform the way you want to perform, like a Hall of Famer like Arn Anderson. So there you go. Check it out. BlueChew.com can make sure you're able to perform at your very best every time. You get the opportunity to have fun, and here's a special deal for our listeners. Try BlueChew free when you use our promo code ARN. That's right, just those three letters, ARN, at checkout. You just pay $5 shipping. That's it. BlueChew.com, promo code ARN to receive your first month free. Once again, go to BlueChew.com for more details and safety info. Well, Arn, it's now time for that segment we've all been waiting for. It's time for the First Lady, Miss Amy Vaughn, who is a strong representative of the Arn Show female demographic. And we have a few questions from Amy, and I think she's still here with us watching live. She said one of her besties, apparently, Allison Faye, is obsessed. And Amy wants to know if you've ever attempted to grow your hair out. Oh, yeah, Allison she loves hair. How about shaving the beard or mustache? So here's a few hair questions. Have you ever attempted to grow your hair out longer than what you normally wore it?
I wish it was that easy. I'd have grown it down to my ass if that was the case. No, I have never, ever since this all started when I was cutting meat before I ever got in the business, and I was working in these freezers all the time, and I was taking a lot of caffeine because when you're working stacking meat and cutting meat and you're around saws and stuff, you better be alert. Little did I know it was going to cause some of my hair to fall out. And guess what? It never grew back. And it was just a process of being prematurely bald and looking older than what I was. In some cases, that made you more mature, I think. Most cases, it just made you look old. But I kindly grew into it. So that was never an issue. Yeah, I've shaved my beard off a couple times, and you don't want to see what's under there. It's like a growed up Gerber baby.
No, listen, man, I'm with you on all accounts. The follically challenged, obviously. The beard helps balance it out, I guess. At least that's what I'm hoping for. You know, nobody wants to run around looking like Uncle Fester.
You know, it got to a point where I thought, well, you know, I don't really, you know, there's not a big revolt that the man don't have any hair, so if they ain't worried about it, I ain't worried about it.
There you go. Amy asks, what did Arn do with his worn ring gear?
I still have some of it.
Okay.
It's somewhere.
All right.
There's not a lot because, you know what, I kept it very simple. Tights, knee pads, and boots.
And that's actually her follow-up question. How often did Arn get new gear? And how or when did you decide if it was time to get new gear or maybe even a new design? This is the fashion questions of our show here.
Yeah, well, believe me, back then, everything was about budget. You know, some guys spent a ton of money. I mean, flares at one end of the spectrum, and some guys would, you know, go with black boots, black tights, black knee pads, and that's the only gear they ever bought. I never tried to get too elaborate with it, you know. Red and white, red and black, pretty basic. Black boots, you know. Got fancy a couple times and did some, it was like an aqua blue and silver, you know, a couple of those. Black and silver. Not too elaborate, but it was more about me. I was trying to save a few bucks and keep things within the budget.
We watched the match where you lost the TV title to Bobby Eaton, and you were wearing the yellow trunks. That was the different look for you too.
Summertime.
Yeah, there you go. And it really made that tan pop. So I'm sure you like that.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Correct.
All right. Finally, Amy wants to know if you've ever been arrested or even close to being arrested. And she signed off the text message to the research guy with a XOXOXO to Arn. So there you go. So have you been a bad boy, Arn, so bad that you got arrested or even close to being arrested?
Not really in a very, very long time. I did some stupid stuff around when I first was, you know, graduating high school and still in a town that was too small to be out roaming around being a smart ass back in those days. Got locked up for scuffling at McDonald's a few times, and a couple of bars around town, but not since I've had a family and tried to be a more responsible adult and try to have a career. Back then I was just trying to fit in, establish myself, and have a career since I had done the unthinkable and somehow got in the business. And those days was not easy.
There you go. So, well, Amy, you know, a little rough around the edges prior to getting into that wrestling career, but then ever since that, you kept your head on straight. And
not a real career criminal or anything that exciting.
No, not doing hard time. All right, Arn, super fan Drew Landry, who I believe the professor is with us here watching from Ad Free Shows, has a question I can't wait for you to answer. What was the bigger pop, the spine buster on Taker at WrestleMania, or concluding the return of the Four Horsemen by introducing Ric Flair in Greenville, South Carolina in September 1998 following a year off TV and a real-life legal dispute with Eric Bischoff and WCW?
Let's put them per capita. 2 different size houses, 2 different shows entirely. The reaction for Rick was huge in Greenville, but it was not like a WrestleMania crowd who thought they just saw something pretty cleverly done and was going to actually pay off. But the size crowds were on no scale whatsoever. I just remember the way I had it laid out in my head. It was going to be like, okay, you introduce everybody, no Rick. They may go, oh God, we're going to get screwed here. And then you give it to them at the very last second. So, and the reaction for that maybe 8,000 people, I don't know how many would have been there, but it was definitely definitive.
Both amazing pops, and like you said, scaling is different, but still memorable for you, you know?
Yeah.
Never forget it.
You know, it was big moments in my career, and it was, you know, I was popping. If nobody else was, I was popping huge.
Love it. Frank Falls has a fun question for someone that's worked 40 years in the business. Using wrestlers you perform with, which wrestler would you use to build the ultimate wrestler? So he has a couple categories here. Okay, so here, and I know you like to do this stuff. So the ultimate wrestler, they would have the knowledge of who? The ultimate wrestler.
Let's say Daniel Bryan.
Knowledge of Daniel Bryan. The strength of who?
Ron Simmons in his prime.
Okay. The speed of who?
Shawn Michaels.
The body of who?
Had to be Luger.
Oh, that's a good one. The stamina and drive of who?
Ricky Steamboat.
The skill set of who? This is the final one.
The skill set. You know what? I may want to reposition.
Okay.
Maybe put Shawn in the skill set.
Okay.
And the speed. Let's just, if I can tweak the speed a little bit, how about just cat-like reflexes? Brad Armstrong.
All right, so here we go. I'm gonna read this back to everybody here. We have the knowledge of Daniel Bryan, the strength of Ron Simmons, the speed of Brad Armstrong, the body of Lex Luger, the stamina and drive of Ricky Steamboat, and the skill set of Shawn Michaels. Whew, that's a pretty remarkable wrestler, Arn. I love it.
That's a great question, and that'd be a hoss, wouldn't it?
Oh, that'd be a stud in every sense of the word. Frank says, once again, Arn, thanks for making my life better then and now. Frank, so much. That was an awesome question.
That was creative. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Yeah, very creative. Good stuff there. The great John Dean is up next, Arn. He says, do you think the Horsemen versus the Varsity Club could have had a long run if it was booked? Would love to have seen Flair versus Dr. Death, Arn and Tully versus Steiner and Sullivan, and Barry versus Mike Rotundo.
Yeah, could have some good matches.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. Yeah, but it was in those days, you just didn't do the heel versus heel thing. It just wasn't a popular move.
Yeah.
Those guys could have been the baby faces pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, if there would have been, you're right. If they would have figured out a way creatively to do that, there could have been some hell of great matches. Think of you and Tully versus, Rick Steiner and Kevin Sullivan, two crazies. I mean, that would have been fun to see you guys against them.
Yeah, Mike Rotundo was a tremendous performer.
Right, and the history of him they were a tag team. Barry and him back in the day, right? The U.S. Express. So having those two work together would have been fun. Now Flair and Dr. Death would have thrown him around the ring.
Yeah, I couldn't have saved him on that one. He'd have been on his own.
I mean, could you coming off the top rope, those slams, the Oklahoma Stampedes, that would have been something else.
Yeah, Doc was a beast.
All right, good question. Another fun one, John Dean. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Al-generated Bear Ryu says, wants to know if you have any good stories from working in Little Rock, Arkansas during the territory days. He said, growing up here, I didn't realize so many promotions made their loops through this area. So Little Rock.
Yeah, Little Rock was a good wrestling town. Really was. It was just that when I would go there working for Bill Watts, it was a regular, semi-regular town about... they would run it every other week or something, but it would seem like it always would be, you would leave from somewhere down south like Baton Rouge, and Baton Rouge to Little Rock was 400 miles of two-lane road. Now, 400 miles people think about in terms of interstate, four-lane interstate. No, this was... I think it was 169, went up about halfway, and then you picked up 71, which these are secondary roads, two-lane, not well lit, potholes everywhere. It was tough. So it was a tough place to get to if you came from down south. And that was, in those days, it was like, you don't even complain about stuff like that. That's just the way it was. That's the way it laid out. But the fans were always awesome. We always did good business there, Little Rock. I want to say a couple of times we went to the fairgrounds, and it was like an outdoor arena. So they mixed it up a little bit, but it was a good market for us.
Good stuff. Robert Dean's up next. He says, I'm from Charleston, West Virginia, and wonder two things about your travel there. Where was the mega fight between Matt Bourne and B. Brian Blair at?
Crosstown at the Ramada Inn.
There you go. Go get a selfie there, Robert, at the Ramada Inn, and that's where it all went down.
Yeah, I forget the exit, but it was across town. It was like you're leaving town, maybe even heading towards, where's the school? The college. It's about 60 miles away. Charleston, not Charleston. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm out on that. Charleston, West Virginia.
Marshall, where Marshall is?
Okay, Marshall. Yeah, football college. That's where Byron Leftwich went.
If you're heading like you're going that way, it's was on that very edge of town. It may not even be there. It was pretty run down at the time.
Okay. Robert also wants to know, what was your favorite place to eat there? Do you have a memory?
Joey's Barbecue.
He was all over that. I couldn't even finish it, man. That's awesome. Good barbecue place.
There's no second place.
He said so many places have come and gone here that I'm curious about your answer.
Joey's Barbecue. And the thing that was so cool about it was right by the arena. It was right by the hotel we stayed at. We stayed at the Marriott there. And it was literally like a block over and a block up. It was half barbecue restaurant / little bar there, and it was half cowboy boots and western wear was the other half. So we all bought cowboy boots, which were at the time, ostrich was the hot skin. They were expensive. He took care of us, and we would always go 100% of the time to Joey's and eat. And he was friends of all the guys and treated us really well. And we reciprocated by filling his place up every time we were in town because fans were jammed in there.
So what would be your go-to order if you were to walk in there?
Always get it to go, right? And don't even put the order in till last call. You never, ever eat on an empty stomach. That's the rule. Think about that for a second. Never eat on an empty stomach.
Okay.
Have a few cocktails would be the idea. They had great ribs. They had great brisket. It was, that's usually what I'd get. Would get like all the meats, hush puppies, cornbread, I think, muffins.
Why do we record this show before dinner?
All this stuff we like, Paul.
Yeah, we're there.
And so we would grab it to go when it was last call. He'd shut it down. We'd walk a block, have our plastic bag full of food, and go load up and hit the hay.
Man, sounds like a great time. Sounds like some great food. And thank you for the question, Robert Dean. Moving from one Dean to another, we're back to the great John Dean. The Dean boys have made their way onto the show. He wants to know, what is your best guess as to what was in the envelope that Baby Doll and Larry Zbyszko had in the angle with Dusty? His guess is it's the paternity papers for all of Tony Schiavone's kids.
Wow. How many kids do you think Schiavone has, really?
Yeah, exactly. We know of only 5, but I'm sure there's more than that. He was busy in the 80s, man.
I think Lois might have had 3 or 4 that she just kept to herself, maybe. Tony was the dad.
Tony doesn't even know he has them.
She's definitely the mom, but Tony was such an egghead, he might not even realized on a few of those pregnancies that she was having another one.
He was all over the country, so he would be clueless. He could have been easily gone for 9 months. She popped out a kid and wouldn't even have a clue.
That's Tony.
That's the Tony you and I know. I got to see him, and so won't be surprised. So, any idea, best guess, what was in that envelope?
No idea.
No idea. Sorry, John, but we do think Schiavone has more than 5 kids. Here's another what-if hypothetical for the founder of the Horsemen from Ted Dahlman. Yes, Andrew, I love to talk about food. Okay, let's get over it, for fuck's sake. I see him in the chat. Here are some wrestlers in years. Would you please give them a thumbs up or down as to being Horseman material? All right, here we go. Harley Race, 1983. He gave it a thumbs up. Ted DiBiase, 1988. 2 thumbs up. Mike Rotunda, 1990.
Not sure.
Not sure on that one. Rick Martel, 1991.
It's hard to say Rick Martel couldn't do whatever he wanted to do in the business about that time. He looked incredible. He could work. The only thing that might have been an issue, because he seemed like to me he was always better featured in a single role, would be part of that group and being just part of that machine that just got other guys over. I don't know if that would have been the best use for him or not.
Ron Simmons, 1992.
Oh, hell yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hell yeah on Ron Simmons.
He could have been anything he wanted to be, and I would have supported it 100%.
And I wouldn't have questioned it. Here's a good one. Eddie Guerrero, 1997.
Eddie was a complete different character.
Okay.
He was a standalone comedy act. He was a standalone performer. Great babyface, great lie, cheat, and steal heel. He was the all-around cowboy. Eddie is one of the arguments for when people say a guy's too small to get over in the business. Eddie didn't get over, did he?
Huh. Oh, he got over then somehow.
Which is an asinine statement, I can name 5 other guys right off the top of my head that weren't very big that got over huge. So I don't think Eddie would have fit with our group.
Elegante, 1991.
I would have moved to Bolivia.
Last but not least, Haku, anytime he damn well pleased.
Haku could be the world champion right now still and have defended the title 12 times a year, every year since he's been in the business. He's still the champion and still the locker room champion, I think. He's right there with Lesnar, My God, they're in a different stratosphere.
Next up, we have a question from Saki the Sock Puppet. I didn't make it up, sir. Saki the Sock Puppet wants to know, was there ever a wrestler you did not want to work with and why? I mean, besides Elegante.
Didn't want to work with, no. I never looked at guy, whether his limitations were attitude or lack of talent or maybe being pushed too soon or just whatever the negatives would be. I never looked at it being a negative working with him. I looked at it as a challenge. It's like I said, I've said several times on this show, my goal was not to be the world champion or some of those accolades. Mine was to be the guy in the locker room that everybody wanted to work with because they know they would have a good match, no matter what their limitations were. And I think this fits that situation.
Yeah, no question. We're going to wrap it up here with our final question. And listen, we're not done, because for those of you that are on ad-free shows, we've decided that this month, for the month of March, our bonus show is going to be a continuation of Ask Arn Anything. So for those of you that are here live, hang tight, because we're coming right back to you. And but for those of you that are not ad-free show members, listen, this is the time. I believe right now we're offering a free week trial. You can check out this continuation of Ask Arn Anything. Whatever questions we don't get to in that overrun, we'll tack them on for the month of April. But our last question here for the main feed, D. Santiago wants to know what the thought process was behind turning Barry heel and having him join the Four Horsemen. So he's just kind of curious about that.
Back to the Crockett days?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you needed to switch Luger. Luger had gotten to the point where he needed to be a babyface, and to take some of the sting off of it, it was nice to strengthen up the Horsemen all in one fell swoop. You would look at that as losing Luger was a huge loss to your average wrestling fan, and to put Barry, I think it was a swerve, a huge swerve. I know it was, just from the reaction. And it's like, oh, God, they lost Lex, but okay, Lex, I can get behind him. Whoa, wait a minute. Now Barry's a bad guy? Jesus Christ. It's always nice when you shoot an angle to have, maybe it's a two-pronged thing. Okay, well, I see what you did there. Wow, I'll be damned. Let me digest that for a sec. Holy smoke, Barry Windham's, he's with those guys now? That was more than a fair swap.
Absolutely. And what I would say is, D, check out the whole story. We talk about the match, that moment, the decision, all of it, when Barry turned March, April 1988. That's the shows you want to check out. You can find them at arnlinks.com on your preferred platform. But listen, as I said, we're going to keep this going for at least another 20 minutes or so and do a short bonus over our friends of ad-free shows. Guys, hang tight here in the chat. We want you to stick around. But listen, Arn, we are getting to the end of March, which means we're very close to the anticipated release of Arn Anderson, My Life as Wrestling's Enforcer. And dude, Dirk Manning and his team have just done a stellar job of putting this all together. We've been seeing some artwork that's come out, and I can't wait to hear and read your story and see your story in this form in such an impactful way.
Yeah, thanks to all those guys, Dirk and his crew. Source Point Express, they've done a great job and very creative, and it's going to be a fun read. I think it's meant to be a fun read, and looking forward to it myself.
Hey guys, listen, for our faithful supporters, check out everything Arn at arnlinks.com. That's where you're going to find episode archives, merchandise stores, including the Horseman hats, the Horseman jackets. I saw guys when they were getting on here talking about getting their jackets and hats coming up soon. So you can find that all there, arnlinks.com. And if you have an old school fan in your life, want to introduce them to the Arn Show, give us a test drive on YouTube. Dom and Marcus, man, they have been fantastic, just working social media and YouTube for the show. And that's the perfect place to sample what we're doing here on the Arn Show. Arn, next week, we return to walk through your career. The newly branded Dangerous Alliance prepares for Starrcade 1991 and the first Battle Bowl. The Dangerous Alliance continues to feud with Sting. You got Dustin Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, Barry Windham. WCW is also traveling to Europe. And the Enforcer begins regularly tagging with beautiful Bobby, and boy, that is sweet music to all of your fans. We can't wait to talk about that. So join us next week to find all about December 1991. Arn, it's been great doing the show with you this week, man.
I know we're a couple ahead here. When is the air date of the show?
This one's going to hit on the 25th, March 25th.
So we've still got a week before WrestleCon?
Yeah, that's right.
really looking forward to that. That's going to be huge out in LA. So those that can be with us, come see us. We're going to be there the whole time from Thursday till Sunday. So can't wait to see everybody.
Huge weekend out in LA, and WrestleCon is one of those cons that you don't want to miss if you're a wrestling fan. And you get to meet Arn, and you say we. So is Brock going to be out there with you? Perfect.
Brock will be there. Tony Hunter's whole crew will be there. It's going to be awesome. Look forward to seeing some old friends, and it's just going to be a huge event for everybody in the wrestling industry.
There you go. Well, listen, I appreciate you doing this with me, Arn. We'll be back again for December 1991 next week. On behalf of the founder of the Four Horsemen, the Hall of Famer, he's Arn Anderson. This is Paul Bromwell, and we'll see you here right Arn, I can't even spit it out. I'm so excited. We'll see you right back here next week on Arn